Okay, since I'm apparently suddenly sat on something today, let's talk about the Gray Bastards, number one in the Lotland series by Jonathan French, a series that I'm not going to continue with. So that sort of tells you what kind of review it's going to be right off the bat. This is a grimdark fantasy, very much um, following in the wake of a lot of other grimdark, which is off of Tolkien. There are orcs, there are elves, there are centaurs, which maybe not in Tolkien as much. There are halflings, very Tolkien-esque, though these ones are priests, kind of slightly creepy priests, and there are half orcs, which are the offsprings of orcs and human beings. And these half orcs, of which the main character Jackal here is a part of a paramilitary hoof which patrols the Lotlands, which is this sort of a buffer zone between human beings and orcs, supposedly repelling the orcs and protecting the humans who kind of really look down on them and despise them. Indeed, the half orcs were slaves that were given their freedom for fighting and for helping beat off the orc hordes, as it was. This story concerning Jackal is very much about him trying to take battle for supremacy of his particular hoof. There are multiple hoofs throughout the Lotlands, and go with the old Claymaster, who is one of the very original half orc dudes who fought in the original wars, and is a guy who is covered in pus and boils, apparently a remnant from the plague that kind of cut through and basically killed as so many human beings and so many orcs that there wasn't really anyone left to fight at all. And so and half orcs are not able to reproduce, so they are infertile. That comes into play in this. This is very much a dude book. The paramilitary organization. These are majority, except for one exception that I'll get to, dudes, and they're dudes who are crude and violent and make a lot of dick jokes and refer to women by their genitalia, and there is a lot of kind of gay panic stuff. The way they're referring to anyone who might have a gay feelings is, oh, backsies, you're getting all backsies on me, which I guess they think is hilarious. So it is definitely dude bro dark fantasy stuff. Let me go to my notes there. Now the exception to this is Jackal and his friend Oates, who is this giant thriceborn. He's got double the orc in him. He is huge. Their friend, who they've known since childhood, is a female half orc named Fetch, who together they seem to form this trio. And Fetch is equally kind of hard ass and kick ass. She is unfortunately introduced, at least from my point of view, introduced as completely naked with two giant, I think, crossbows in her hand, which she uses to dispatch somebody who is threatening Jackal at the time. So yes, she is completely kick-ass, but yeah, it's like immediately that first scene, it's like all the dudes like looking like mouth open, whether there's this completely buck naked female half orc. It's kind of for the pleasure of them and for the reading audience to kind of that doesn't there's not as much of that going on, but it's kind of striking. That is how she is like, look, she has boobs, is the first thing that we are introduced to about Fetch. But what's happened is that to get into the hoof, you have to have two members that will nominate you. And once Jackal and Oates got in, they nominated her. There was a vote, and she got in. And she's one of the very rare female half orcs who is actually a member of the hoof. The other female characters that we see are basically is prostitutes. There's one kind of a mother figure who runs the orphanage of half orcs, half humans. Now, this book is, I like that this book uses Jackal's limited POV, where he is definitely a young, full of energy kind of dude who's like, I know how things are best. This old guy is running things wrong, and he's got very definite ideas, which throughout the story slowly gets peeled away, and you find out just how wrong he is. You know nothing, Jon Snow. Is sort of, you could see someone saying throughout this, quote from Game of Thrones that way, but he is even more deeply wrong about what the situation is in this world. And it's actually a good way of kind of doing world building, because we get presented with one kind of picture of the world, but then we find out it is more complicated, maybe more corrupt, maybe more horrible than we even imagined. Um, but that has a limit of like how many things that he is wrong about, how many things that the reader gets told one thing only for it to turn out to be something else later on. Gets a little bit frustrating at a certain point. You're like, well, why don't we just start the story here versus all this other wrong stuff we knew? It's like it does get a little bit tiresome of like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be wrong too. Oh, okay, well, this is going to be wrong too. There's, you can do that, you can overdo that to the point where you just kind of like, you don't know, you don't you don't know. Now, that's not a problem for me, because like it's a slight annoyance. But when I get to the kind of core thing of this, and this is probably going to make me sound like one of these just kind of, what a certain viewpoint would just call me a woke idiot asshole, is that yes, all these orcs are, they're gray skin color, and they're all bastards. And they're all bastards because they are the product of orcs raping human females, and this being the product of what happened. All these characters are all the byproduct of rape. And I think it's like you combine that, which, there's a thing of this of like, this uh perhaps it's the fact that we're using this is like, it's a kind of a cool, kick-ass, grim, dark thing. It's like I can't help but thinking about how in war, on war, rape is often used as a tool of suppression of, it is something that is used, whether willfully organized way or just kind of negligence, just through who cares. They're young guys, yeah, they're gonna fuck whoever we're around, and they're not gonna actually ask. These are not going to be consensual relationships um in the real world. So that it's just sort of taken as a kind of a given of like, this is populated an entire land full of rape children that have grown up to be these half orc, despised half orc things. It's just, it just has uh, such a kind of it's such a, just, it feels terrible. It's a hard thing for me to take entertainment from, I guess is what I'm saying. And that, like, there's a ton of prostitutes with hearts of gold in this book. There's Jackal getting complimented for his dick size gets mentioned. It's just the happy hooker is kind of setting it in this kind of world. It just feels gross. It feels really, really, really gross to me. And it doesn't, um it's something like, um if this was in a different type of story that was grim dark in a way that was actually grim and dark versus kick ass fun entertainment, because this book has a lot of fun, cool action scenes that I enjoy, that Jonathan French is really good at writing. But it's put on this basis of yeah, there are a whole bunch of females, unnamed female women who are raped by orcs that produce this, is just like, I it just soured me. It soured me to this. And it doesn't help that just through plot reasons, the character of Fetch, she has to be slightly, her character has to be kind of obscured throughout um, the narrative, partially because it's all taken from Jackal's point of view, but also because they are through the plot are kind of pulled to different sides, so he doesn't get to see her. Um, I don't know if it's a spoiler for the next book. I do know that the next book is told from her point of view. Um, but it's not going to, that even if it's told from her point of view, it's not going to change sort of the basis of this fantasy world. And yeah, it's like rape really exists. War children really exist in the real world, but I don't. If I saw an action adventure movie, there's two types of action. There's a war movie that was maybe like going through the ramifications and the children who are born of mixed heritage of like a country where the Americans went into Vietnam, and there's a lot of children there who are the product of American soldiers and Vietnamese women, for example. um, and how they are treated in both countries, and there's like some and there it's not all uh, it's not all just product of rape. There's actually just two young people just happen to be of different cultures, having had that, but having to deal with having a child that is of the two heritages and how they get treated. But this is like presupposing in a world where basically this is human women who've been raped by fucking monsters, and that, and possibly have died in childbirth, or and there's a lot of talk here of like elf women being raped by orcs, and them just killing themselves. That would just be the automatic thing for them to do. It's just like, oh, it is grim dark in a gross way because it's entertainment. It's blurred with this entertainment. I don't want to be entertained by that. I refuse to be entertained by that, which I guess is why it's like, yeah. The milk toast version is, it's not for me. And I'm sure I've read things on Goodreads from people who strongly disagree with that, say no, I can get my entertainment with that. They're obviously not looking at it from that perspective. There's different perspectives of how to look at it. If that's how you're looking at it, you know, don't feel attacked. If you're somebody who was considering this series and that's something that would be an issue for you, well, you've got my 2 cents from it. So you either will investigate more and find more capable people of talking about this, or you'll say, okay, I will. I'll save myself the blood, sweat, and tears on that one. So yeah, that is that is my not really very positive review of the Gray Bastards, which is, it's well written action, but in the end of the day, I am passing on. I am passing on from this book and going on my merry way. Which yes, you go on your merry way too now.